Today we're going to be doing the gem and holograms costume, the pink one with the silver and blue, I guess, explosion fringe belt, whatever you call it. So excited to do this. I figured this would be a great tutorial for anyone wanting to do this. So let me go over the fabrics and things that you will need. Again, I cover same things, but I'll go over it slightly. On the machine, you're going to want a walking foot for sure. With these types of fabrics that I'm about to use on, you definitely want to use stretch needles. These are designed to go through this type of fabric much easier, and they won't shove fabric down into your bobbin area and then mess up the whole project. So definitely you're going to want to use some stretch needles. You can get away with Microtex needles too, or possibly ballpoint needles, but stretch needles are best for this type of material. Now I got all this at Joann's Fabrics. I believe this one for sure I know is the Yaya Han. I got some silver, I think it's 4-way stretch material. This metallic blue one is going to be the little starburst, the little burst things on a belt. And of course this one, me and my client, we went shopping together and we both agreed that this is the best fabric to make the asymmetrical wrap dress from. It's very 80s, very cartoony. I love the grid on it. It's just perfect for this type of project. So first what we're going to go ahead and do is I have my client's measurements here. I already prepared a giant piece of paper, which is just like a bunch of newspapers taped together, because I'm going to need the large piece for her dress, and then I have a smaller piece over here that I'm going to show you how to do the belt on. So we'll start with the belt and work our way to the dress, and then that'll be the end of part 1 for the video, and part 2 will be the construction of this whole outfit. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so here we are on our piece for the belt. I'll move this chair aside. Okay, so the measurements that we are going to deal with here, a bit of guesstimation, but not too much guesstimation, I guess you could say. We're going to focus on the waist, and we're going to pick a number in between 38 and 46 for the low waist, because the Gem's belt is quite wide. I mean, not length, it's in height, I guess you would say the correct term. It's quite wide, right. Totally can't speak today. So you're going to want the waist, low waist, which you could pick a number. And you don't have to be too anal about it, because this fabric stretches. I am going to put, like an interfacing, but I'm just going to use like another stretchy fabric. Again, just for structure, so it doesn't kind of fold down on itself when you're wearing it. And then that's it. So pretty much the waist. So we're going to have one piece, and that'll cover both front and back of the belt. So you're going to divide your waist number by 2. Okay. So we'll start off like that. Let's start with the waist. So 38 divided by 2. So we're going to kind of start out doing like a rectangle, and then we're going to shape it into the waistband. So hope you can see this here. So 19. So I hope you can see the markings here. So here's 19. So from there to there, this is 19. Let me make this darker. Yeah, okay. That's a little more visible for you now. Then, remember I told you to pick a number between your waist, unless you can get the actual measurement. I didn't, but I'm going to pick 40. Let's pick 41. 41 would be the next best thing. So that's the waist. And again, like we said, Gem's belt is kind of wide. So let's make this 8 inches in height. I hope you can see that. And that's the end of it down here, which is right here. See, if I had white paper, this would be totally much easier for me to teach you guys, but I don't. I'm so sorry. So that now that we have our 8 inches, let's just make another line here to here so we know what to cut off. Because you don't want to have like a bunch of excess, paper everywhere. It's not needed. So now that we have how wide our belt is, let's go ahead and cut off the excess. Okay. And then the belt, we'll just trim this off a little bit because I didn't mark all the way over there. Okay. So all this is trash. So now we're left with that piece, okay? Half of what our waist is and then 8 inches long, 8 inches wide. You know what I mean. For the front, we'll do it two ways because it does have to kind of overlap in the back. So that way you can I'm gonna do a Velcro so that way you can overlap one piece of fabric and Velcro it. So the front will be slightly smaller than what the back will measure out a couple more inches to make it longer, but that's so that way it can overlap in the back for the closure. Now. Where's my marker? Okay. So in most cases, people are not rectangles. Especially as a woman, you do have a curve. So this is the side. So what I'm going to do here is give it a slight curve. Now, if you have one of those curved rulers to properly do patterns, I would use it. Why I haven't bought one at this point? Every time I see one, I choose to spend my money on something else. So if you have that, see how I just did like a slight curve in, and that way it can hug her curves when she's wearing it, and it's not just like some box belt that she's wearing. It actually goes with her figure and follow the curves. So there's that. Now, this is the front. Okay, can you see where I put front? Front, we're going to cut 2. Cut 2. One, listen, we're going to cut one of the fabric, one of the lining. Because once we cut our silver fabric, then we're going to go back and make a stencil and cut out the little starburst blast thingies. And then we're going to put the blue underneath that. And then we're going to have to stitch it in place. And then, of course, you don't want to see that from behind the silver fabric. So you're going to want to put an interfacing to cover up that blue that's going to be just sticking out back there. So you're going to cut one of the material, one of the lining. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Cut 3. So let's review that. So one of the fabric, one of the interfacing or stabilizer, and the lining. And that's going to be for both front and back pieces. Okay. So when we do the back piece, pretty much you can just copy this one that you made on another piece of newspaper. And I would definitely add 2 inches to each side on each end and make a new piece covering this, because remember, in the back it has to overlap, so that way you could put Velcro on one side, Velcro on the other, so that way there's closure. It is a costume. I'm choosing Velcro, trying to make everyone's life a lot easier. If you want to overdo it and put like hook and eyes or do grommets and do like a lace-up belt, that's totally up to you. But I'm keeping this simple for myself and for my client. So that's why I'm doing it this way with Velcro. Besides, she works in a doctor's office, so I'm sure she doesn't want anything that restrictive. So that is the belt. Cut 3 of each front and back out of your stabilizer, interfacing, and main fabric. So now let us go on to the dress part. Okay, so let's start on the dress now. Measurements we will need for this dress. Okay, the back, the sleeve, the bust, waist, hips, the length. Now, when I took her measurements, I did the length from the back because I wanted to make sure it was work appropriate. And, you know, if you have like a big behind it and you have a dress, usually the back looks shorter than the front because it lifts it so much. So I wanted to make sure definitely that was work appropriate. So I did it kind of backwards, but that's fine because the front needs to be longer than the back anyways at an angle because it's an asymmetrical wrap dress. So just take that into account as I'm doing this pattern. The torso, which is from the top of your shoulders to where your waistline starts, that distance, and then the armhole, which is just going around your arm hole where your arm comes out of on your side. So yeah, let's do that. So her back was 17 inches. I always start with the back because that helps me start off. I kind of work my way down, you know, from like top to bottom when I do this. So if you're wondering what the hell is the back? Well, the back measurement is just like I measure it from shoulder to shoulder from behind. So I'm just going to tilt my paper so you can see this. So the back is, now we don't cut this number in half. The back 17 inches, 17 inches. So I'm going to measure this out. Here's 17. Okay, that's what I got. Hope you can see that. This is rule of thumb for me that I always follow, but what you can do is now, let's say this is the edge of the person's shoulder and the neck begins like over here. I didn't have that on the paper, but this helps to measure that distance. Usually everyone's give or take is about a 5. So I use that as just an estimation and then I'll get it, you know, more accurate when we have the fitting. So from here, this is the edge of the shoulder to where the person's neck starts. And you do that on both sides. So let me go to the edge of the shoulder over here, 5 inches. Okay. So now I know the distance in between here, that will be our neck hole. But before I draw the little dip for the neck hole, another rule of thumb that I like to do, and not always, but this is just like the general thing I do and then I correct this during fitting, is where that neck part starts, where we measured it here. See how this is the edge of the shoulder and this is where the neck starts. I always measure up 1/2 inch from that side because usually the shoulders from the neck starting is higher than where they end at the edge of the shoulder. So I just do that and then I just draw a line. Can you see that triangle? And then I do the same over here. Okay. And I'm just about ready to chop off the first part as I'm going. So here we'll just kind of do, and you can actually use like a paper plate. I kind of just eyeball this. Just for now, this is going to change later, but at least I know like where the neck hole is. So that way I can cut all this excess out. So now I'm kind of done with that part. So I'm just going to chop this off as so. So I'm just going to crappily chop this off. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Starting off. I know I had put an extra paper here just in case, but it's fine. And I may need to put more paper on this edge as I'm going if the person's measurements are just getting wider, and that's fine. That's why I like doing it this way, because I can just keep widening my pattern piece if I need to. Okay, so now that I have that top part done, so now we go down to the torso length, which is 18. Now the torso length, like I was saying, is from the top of the shoulder down, and this is where her waistline starts. The smallest part of her torso, this is where it starts. 18 inches down. And if you're looking at this and you're like, God, that's a really long number. Remember, people's boobs make this number longer because you're going over the boobs. So that's more distance that the tape measure has to go over. So if it seems too long to you, don't worry, just double check yourself because it's more than likely just your chest lifting that, increasing that number. Okay. So I drew a big line. So I know that this is her waistline. Okay. Her waist, this green line right here. So now that I have that, then I'm going to go back up and we're going to do the armholes. Okay. Her armholes are 20 inches. Now for this one, we do need to chop it in half. So I'm going to go to the edge of the shoulder. Okay. And as a rule of thumb here again, I start 2 inches before. So right here at 8. So that's kind of where her armpit is, okay? I'm gonna do it on the other side too. Go down 8. Because then we're going to curve it out. And when we curve it out, it's gonna curve out at that extra 2 inches to make our 10 inches for the front of the shirt. Oop, I should have drawn a line here too. Sorry. It's right there. So that's where we are, okay? Now, let's get the center point. Now I'm just getting this because it helps keep things even. So from armpit to armpit, it's 17 inches because that's the length of the back. Now this is where we need to kind of start tapering off things and widening this area to give room for the bust. But real quick, so 17, what's half of 17? That is 8.5, right? Yeah, I know, I'm terrible with mental math. I'm not even gonna pretend like I'm that smart. Okay. So at this point, I like to just make a long line down the center. Why do I do that? You'll see in a moment. So just make like a long line down, whatever, because that has to be equal sections, right? This is an equal section, that's an equal section. So now let's go to the bust. Her bust is 43, so whatever that is to you, go ahead and chop that number in half. So that's 21.5, okay? What's the midpoint of 21.5? We'll divide that by 2 again, and that's 10.75. So that helps me keep things even here. So aligning my ruler with the armpit line, I'm gonna get 10.75 right on this midsection line. So I'm gonna make a mark way over here on the edge of this ruler, okay? And then we know that, again, let's go back to just chopping our bust line in half, that this is 21.5, okay? So her bust is from here to here, and it comes out slightly from where the armpit is, okay? Now again, if you have one of those really cool pattern rulers, you could use them at this time. What I do is this is the edge of her bust, this is the top of the shoulder, and this distance is half of her armhole. Remember, I measured down only 8 inches, I didn't do the full 10. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and make a curve as so. Can you see the curve? I meet the edge of the shoulder to that armpit bust line, okay? I'm gonna do it again here. Okay. So now we're gonna chop off again, okay? Look at it. I got green all over my hand. That's because I'm marking over clear tape. In a perfect world, I'd rather use masking tape because it's like paper and it absorbs the paint and it doesn't rub off. But anyways, Can you see? Can you see how it's coming together now? It's like we start off with a rectangle and we're just shaping it and shaping it and shaping it. So now let's move down to the waist. We already know where the waist starts. We've already done our torso measurement, right? Which is the distance from the top of the shoulder to where her natural waistline starts, which is at 18. So with our handy dandy midpoint line that we cut this pattern in half with, let's see, let's look at her waist. Her waist is 38. So 38 divided by 2 is 19. So the front half of this pattern needs to be 19 across on the waist. What's the midpoint of 19? Well, that's 9.5. So again, we're going to line up our ruler with the waistline, but we're also going to line up 9.5 on that midpoint line. So that way we know where to mark everything. So I'm going to start, this one is right here. And since it's 19, when you cut that waist number in half, here's my 19 right here. So from here to here is where her waistline is, okay? So from these two measurements, now I'm gonna take my ruler. This is where her bust armpit measurement ends. This is where her waistline starts. So I'm just gonna join these two markings like that with my ruler. And no, I'm not too paranoid about marking my table because this is a water-soluble marker, so it wipes right off. No, I would not recommend Sharpies, although I have used Sharpies, but I'm not this careless when I'm doing it, you know what I mean? So now, can you see that? So now let's keep chopping, okay? I'm gonna cut down, and I'm not gonna cut more than that because I'm gonna need all this room right here for the hips, more than likely. So I'm just gonna cut out this weird trapezoidal piece from my pattern. See, now that I've cut that, can you see a shirt pattern forming? See, that's all I do. Now we're moving down, okay? Moving down, down, down. Now her hips are 46.5. Now I'm gonna throw a term here at you, ease. Whatever the pattern that you buy or whatever, it talks about ease. Ease is like that extra room for you to actually walk and breathe in when you wear clothes. Unless you're wearing like a bodycon dress that is just probably half an inch smaller than your measurements or an inch smaller and it just hugs every single curve. Technically I don't think there's really ease in those, but if you have a blouse, you have pants and they fit you, it's not your exact measurements. It has some extra room in there for you to move around and breathe. And when you sit down and your legs kind of spread apart, they don't rip the pants. That extra room in there is called ease, okay? So for the hips, I'm gonna add in some ease. Her measurement's 46.5. I'm gonna throw in another ½ inch, okay, on each side here. So that's an inch extra. So instead of 46.5, we're gonna have 47.5. So 47.5, so keep that in account when you do that. That's 23.75, okay? Now, another rule of thumb that I always go by, I always measure down 7 inches from the natural waistline, and I just consider this the hip line. If you want to measure yourself and see what that measurement is, most of the time that's what it is. But again, this type of pattern is forgiving if it's not true to your body type because it's a wrap dress, and wrap dress is just super forgiving. Like if you gain or lose weight, well, you just wrap it more tight, right? So that's that. So I did my line 7 inches down. Now what's half of your hip? Well, in this case, it was 23 something and I cut that in half again. And remember, we have our midpoint line and that's going to help us keep everything centered, which is 11.87. So I'm going to put it on that line right before the 12. Should probably be doing this in centimeters at this point because it gets too freaking, the numbers just get too small, but it's okay. So go back. So 47.5 is our whole hip measurement with ease. Cut that in half, that's 23.75. So I still have it lined up on my midpoint. I made the marking over here because that's the beginning of the ruler. Over here, way over here. Let me see. Way over here. And then 23.75, well, that's this line right here. Can you see that marking? Okay. Now, don't freak out too much. I'm just doing this harsh lines and then we soften it later. So from the waistline to the hip line, I'm just gonna draw a line, okay? Don't freak out. Oh, and if you're wondering, I am gonna add allowance when I go ahead and put this on my fabric and cut. I will mark it with a chalk, okay? Because again, you gotta have ease everywhere else. I put more ease in the hips because, well, that's the hips, and hips spread a lot when you sit. So we have this harsh line here going from waist to hip. What I'm gonna do is I'm just going to try and soften it so it's not so harsh. So I'm just trying to, like, even if it comes in just a little bit, just to soften it, make it more rounder. Okay, so now I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna start where that hip line is, and I'm gonna cut out like a weird trapezoidal piece, remember? Just so we can see our pattern coming together. See now how that's not such a harsh line anymore because I just kind of rounded it out. Okay, are you seeing a pattern coming together? So there we go. I'm gonna move this up so you can see it more. Now length. Let's check our length. We need it to be 36 in the back for obvious reasons I explained earlier. So that is this whole ruler, right? So I'm just going to, oh, how nice. It's 36 where that crease is. That's why I like using newspaper too, because sometimes the creases are in the right places and it just helps you. It just helps, okay? So this pattern piece that we're doing, this is the back first. We're starting with the back first because once we're done with this piece, then we can just replicate it on another piece of fabric for the front, and then we can draw, you know, the longer corner for that asymmetrical side in the front. Okay, so this, oops, let me just fix this one part. See how I had extra fabric? So this is her hip. So let's try and just round that out. Where is it? So about right. So this is a little bit of eyeballing, but again, if you have that pattern ruler thingy with the curves, you'll be flawless, I swear. Okay. See, now that looks like someone's body, okay? But we're not done yet. Remember, you gotta make, now we're gonna make an exact copy. Just put this on another piece of paper and just outline it. And then I'll come back. Once I paste some more paper together, then I'll go ahead and show you. Okay, so now I have some grid paper. I already outlined it, but I want you to see, like, when I take it off. I mean, basically, it is what it means. I just outlined it. Now you can see this a little bit better. I'm hoping I also drew the midpoint line. You can see it way up there, and then it continues down here. So I outlined the back. Now I have an exact replica of that on this gridded wrapping paper, which I did just a quick live video about this right now because I had one of those eureka moments, you know what I'm saying? So I'm going to continue this midpoint line because that'll help us right now in a little bit. Yes, I'm using the crappy headphones. Okay. Because I don't want the audio to pick up what my grandma's watching on TV right now and then have this video flagged. So anyways, so I have my midpoint line. Now we know that Jem's dress, so this piece that we cut out is going to serve as two separate pieces, the left side and the right side. We're not going to discard it because one side obviously is longer at a point than the other. So with this help of this midpoint line, what I'm going to do here, and I might just end up doing another copy of it actually, but we'll see when we get there. So I'm going to go from the top of the inside of the neckline. Can you see it way right there, right where the shoulder and neck meet? I'm going to kind of curve it over. See how I curved that, so you can see the midpoint line and then how my ruler's curved. I'm going to draw a line because this is where I'd like it to wrap on one side. Okay, so I'm just going to come down a little bit. So remember, this is the back. So this is already 36 inches. So on one side, now I believe Jem's dress, the longer point comes this way. So on this side of the pattern, I'm not going to make it too much longer. And the helpful thing about this grid paper is that it has a grid and it helps you keep things even. And I found this in my closet and I'm just going to totally go buy more of it because this makes great pattern paper. Let me just say. So yeah, I'm going to have to make another copy of this, but I mean, it is what it is. So let me make a line this way. And I'm going to stop. Let me see, can you see this? I just met the line, but as you can see the line I drew to meet that, I'm going to connect this now, okay? Okay, so this is front. So I'm going to label this piece that I cut out here, front, side, and you're only going to cut one, unless you want to go all out and do lining for this dress, but I'm just going to cut one of your fabric, okay? So again, right now I'm going to roll out more paper. I'm going to make another copy of this so I can do the other side of the pattern because it's kind of cut into that other piece, which is okay. And if you're using newspaper, you know, it's not a big deal. It's just newspaper. It's easily disposable. You can get more easily. So I'm going to cut this out. Okay, let me cut this side out. I'll pull out some more paper. I'll make another replica of this, and then I'll just do what I did here opposite, but have more of an angle that comes out more because her dress, like I said, is asymmetrical. So let me do that. Okay, so I did one more copy of this thing. And again, let's find our midpoint line of this dress, 24. So it's this line. I started from the bottom, but don't worry. I mean, it's off in the neckline, but this whole curve that I, just whatever, that's in the front pieces, that's going to disappear because it's going to be all angled. but I just have that, you know, as something, as a guideline. Okay, so there's my half line, okay? So we already did this side, so we can just forget about that piece. We're concentrating on this side now. So here we're going to, again, start at the corner where the neck and the shoulder meet. Sorry, my camera died. So we're gonna do a more extreme, you know, come in more on this side of the pattern. So I'm just kind of swiveling it, but I want to keep that point over there at the corner of that shoulder neck as much as possible. Oh God, look at my hands. Okay. So I'm going to come in more. Let me see if I can reach it. If my headphones will allow it. It moved a little bit. Okay, no biggie. Okay, I'm just gonna pull back here. And then I'm just gonna continue this line about, see, this is a little guesstimation, but not too bad. I came down about 8 inches. Okay, about 8 inches from that back. Remember, this is the copy of the back. So 8 inches down. It's gonna have that extreme, you know, line. But here, I am not going to do, oops, a complete straight line. I'm going to match this corner to the edge of that front piece right there. And it kind of makes probably a right triangle. If I measure these two lines, probably does like a right triangle. Okay, so that's it for that. So this piece, this is our front left, I guess you could say. If you're wearing it, that's your left side. Or I'm looking at it, that is my left side. Front left, cut one of your fabric. So I'm gonna cut this piece out. Then we must do the sleeves. Last part of the video here, we're gonna do the sleeve. So we're going to do the sleeve length and the armhole. I do have the sleeve length at 7, but now that I think about it, I looked again online at the gem picture and her costume looks like it has 3/4 length sleeves. So that's what we'll do. And with our beautiful grid paper that I figured out that I had, I'm gonna go ahead and line this up on the grid mark on 9. Right here. That's our center point. And then for that elbow marking area, let's do let's have these kind of loose. Let's do 9. So I'm going to put this on the line, our midline on the 4.5 mark on the ruler. And then I'm going to start at the beginning of my ruler here and go all the way to 9. So as you can see here, the T, this is the end of the sleeve, our midpoint. So we know that the top of the sleeve, the curve is going to be right above that midpoint line on the sleeve. If you've ever deconstructed or cut out a pattern piece, you notice that it is like rounded at the top. And of course, that's for the shoulder. So this here needs to equal 20 inches because that's how big the measurement that I have. So I'll try and do here, and it is a little guesstimating, especially if you don't have like the right rulers and stuff, but I mean, it comes out correct in the end, like it's fine. And you'll see here, and I'll show you, this is how I do it normally. Like, it's a lot of like just messing around with stuff. And then this grid paper is just like amazing. So this is very helpful. So I counted 8 squares. Each square is an inch. So I'm going to try and connect. I'm going to go up. You see what I did there? So I went up an inch from where that is. And then I will re-measure everything to make sure the sleeve length is still 9. Okay, so right here, I'm short 1.25 inches. So I'm going to go up 1.25 inches. And then I'm just going to play with my lines again. And connect them back. Then I'm going to remeasure this new line that I made, this curvy line for the shoulder. There you go, 20. So this is 20. So now my 2 endpoints, I'm going to connect this together, my 2 lines. And then I'll see what needs to be corrected. Oops. I'll see what needs to be corrected during the fitting, but there it is. That's the sleeve. So sleeve, cut 2. All right. Next video, part 2, will be out pretty soon because I need to get this costume done. And that'll be the cutting and assembling of the whole costume. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Good luck. Bye.